Hi, I'm Anthony Birch, and this is a talk I did at GDC 2015. It's called, well, you can read what it's called. So I was a writer at Gearbox Software for about 5 years, and while I was there, I was lead writer of Borderlands 2 and its DLC, which is what I'm going to talk about today. So this is a talk that Richard Rouse and Tom Abernathy did last year at GDC, and in it they basically argued through some research that they had done and some other people had done that players actually remember character a lot more than they remember plot or story. If you ask them, what did you like about one of your favorite games? They bring up character moments. They don't bring up big plot events. I'm going to build off that today by saying that not only do players remember character a lot more than plot, they also like character a lot more than plot. And if you focus on character over plot, at least in DLC, you can make a lot more money. You don't need to tell the people in suits about the first two things because they won't listen, but just mention the money thing. So Borderlands had a shitload of DLC. There were 4 major campaign DLCs. There were 5 smaller campaign DLCs called Headhunter Packs. There was a Creature Slaughter Dome, and there was something called the Ultimate Vault Hunter Upgrade Pack 2: Digistruct Peak Challenge because brevity is for suckers. But today I'm going to talk about these 4 major campaign DLCs and sort of what we learned as we went through them in terms of how players value character over plot. Because when I started, I thought players really love plot. They love it because they're in forums saying they want more plot. They're in reviews of other DLCs saying that the DLC wasn't good enough because there wasn't enough plot stuff. And they specifically want a couple things. They want us to expand the story. They want it to feel like a sequel rather than a side story. They want the DLC to expand the universe and let you know that there's way more out there to do in the world of the franchise that you love. And they want they want big questions answered about our lore. So specifically for Borderlands, they wanted to know about the Iridians, who are these alien races. This is alien race that we've never met in the Borderlands franchise that built all the vaults that the player finds. And there are these big questions about who they are, what they want, why they exist. And players wanted that from our DLC. The problem is that stuff is really, really, really hard to do properly within the confines of DLC for a bunch of reasons. So if we were to try to make a DLC about the Iridians, we would need a bunch of new art to determine what the Iridians look like. We need a lot of new gameplay because if you fight them, you wouldn't want them to be like basically just bandits with a different skin on them. That would be a bummer. We would have to do this all on a DLC timeline, which is much, much more truncated than a regular game timeline, and it's not a good way to make big decisions about your universe in a very, very short amount of time. That is something you would almost inevitably regret. And not only that, but even if we did do all that, that means that we've spent all of that time and all that energy to do a less good version of something that we might want to save for a major game release. So unfortunately, big important plot DLCs, even though players say they want them, are generally not feasible. So when it came time to do our first DLC, Captain Scarlet and her Pirate's Booty, I did not come up with that name, we wanted to have a story that felt like a really cool high concept pitch, but that also wasn't so epic that players would get upset by it, or players that it would be impossible to make essentially. So we made what we thought was a cool side story that was kind of like Raiders of the Lost Ark meets the first 20 minutes of Return of the Jedi with sand pirates and stuff. So it's a DLC where you go find this ancient treasure and you have to befriend this pirate captain Scarlet, but she's also not that trustworthy, and you have this sort of Catwoman thing with her where you're friends but you're not, and there's a big Leviathan and there are betrayals and there's sand pirates. It's all very, very plot heavy. And the DLC came out, and players thought it was like fine, thought it was okay. Their main complaint was that it felt more like a side story than a proper, expansion to the franchise lore, which was fair because that's totally what it was. But I thought, okay, that's a bummer. I want these to feel important. These should feel like really necessary parts of the Borderlands canon. So for our second DLC, Mr. Torque's Campaign of Carnage, even though the plot of this DLC is basically just the Running Man, it's kill your way to the top of a big list of gladiators in some big tournament, I tried to add some stuff, some little lore nuggets to make it feel more important and to expand the universe like the players wanted, but in a way that was cost effective. So we said, okay, you're not just fighting to get to the top of this list, you're fighting to get to the top of this list because there's a vault that says, on the outside of it in alien writing, that if you can basically defeat all these people and spill the blood of the ultimate coward and be the ultimate badass, then it'll open for you and for only you, which now implies that like vaults can have things inside them that aren't just big tentacle monsters, which is what the other 2 games taught the player, and that vaults can be deciphered and they can actually be translated from Iridian into English, and like that's a big deal. That changes the entire texture of the Borderlands universe, right? That's a big deal. And the DLC came out and people really liked it. They enjoyed it. They thought it was funny. But nobody ever mentioned the lore stuff, which I thought was a little bit weird, but then I thought, no, I get what it is. They're enjoying the DLC because of the lore stuff. They don't realize it, but that's why they enjoy it. It's just some little subconscious thing that's working on them. So with our third DLC, Sir Hamlock's Big Game Hunt, we really, really added a lot more lore stuff. We doubled down on plot-heavy sort of experiences. So this is basically just a plot or a DLC about going to the swamp and fighting some shit with Sir Hammerlock, but we wanted to add more plot stuff because lore is awesome, right? And so we said, you're doing it to stop a Hyperion scientist from cloning Handsome Jack and resurrecting him. That means that cloning exists in this world now, which is huge. That means that Handsome Jack can maybe come back. That's really huge. There's a Hyperion scientist that is still out there and doing really interesting things with evil and whatever the fuck. It was basically really, really, really plot heavy. And the DLC came out and people thought it was not that good. They weren't super psyched about it, which was confusing because they said they liked plot. When we gave them more plot in the Torg DLC, they liked it. And then we gave them even more plot this time around, they didn't like it. Why is that? But then I thought back to what they did like about this DLC, and they did like the villain, Professor Nakayama. He is just this really pathetic, really sad schlub of a dude who is in over his head and doesn't know what he's doing, and he's just really, really scared all the time, and he's really, really bad at his job, to the point where when you have your final face-off against him, he falls down some stairs and dies. He doesn't even get a chance to fight you. He's just a schlub, and people related to him and thought he was really fun. But they liked him because he was an interesting character. And when I thought about it more, when people talked about what they liked about the Torg DLC, they didn't care about the plot, they didn't care about the lore, but they really liked Torg as a character, and they really enjoyed his presence. Sorry, you can't see because of my webcam, but that's a girl dressed as Torg. It's not just a picture of boobs for no reason. And I thought that was really interesting. And looking back on the first DLC, people didn't like Captain Scarlet, not because necessarily the plot was not important enough, but because oftentimes a lot of people said they just didn't like Scarlet that much as a character because she was untrustworthy and they didn't know how they were supposed to feel about her, which is sad because I really, really like Scarlet. But a lot of people still didn't like the character and therefore didn't like the DLC. So I realized there was a common denominator amongst all of these DLCs, which is that whether you like them or you didn't like them, the reasoning often had a great deal to do with character, not plot. So when it came time to do our fourth DLC, Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep, we thought, what if we doubled down on character? What if we made character the main sort of thrust of this DLC's plot, or the story rather? So this is Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep, and it has, like some of the other DLCs, a very high concept pitch, which is, what if you took Borderlands and put it in the world of Dungeons & Dragons, of a fantasy world? We wanted to have you fighting skeletons and wizards and using magic spells and stuff, but we also didn't want to fuck up the main Borderlands canon universe by saying that, oh, magic just exists now, by the way. We wanted to keep that world sci-fi and keep the fantasy separate, so we contextualized this entire DLC as actually being a game within a game called Bunkers and Badasses, which is basically Dungeons & Dragons, obviously. And everything you're doing in that game is actually just within the realms of this one tabletop game that Lilith, Tina, Brick, and Mordecai are playing. So that got us what we wanted in terms of justifying the player's actions, but it also had a side effect, which is that the actual sort of canon plot and universe, in terms of the ramifications of this DLC, is really, really low. Nothing actually happens to any of our characters. So, like, the plot of this DLC, as far as the universe is concerned of Borderlands itself, is Tina, Brick, Lilith, and Mordecai play a game of Bunkers and Badasses. That's it. That's all that happens. I mean, granted, there's some conflict between the characters because that's what stories are kind of made of, where like Tina's trying to use the game as a way of dodging the fact that Roland is dead and trying to deny that he's dead, and so he shows up in her game as a character and everything's great, and she's trying to pretend that it never happened, while the other characters are trying to make her accept, no, sorry, you have to accept that Roland's dead, you can't keep running away into this fantasy game. And like Mordecai really doesn't like the game, and Lilith really does, and there's conflict that comes between the characters like that, but in terms of the actual plot of what affects our characters, there's no big enemy to defeat, there's no advances in the overall world lore, and you don't learn anything at all about anything really, you just hear character stuff. And not only that, but there's nobody's ever in danger, ever, at any time in the entire DLC. It's literally just 4 people sitting around a table talking. It's like Dazed and Confused or That 70s Show. It's just a hangout kind of DLC. And this was really, really scary, because Borderlands is a game about shooting really, really big things with a gun, getting an even bigger gun off of their body that you use to kill even bigger things, and it's all very, very actiony. And we didn't know how people were going to feel about a DLC that was intentionally low-key, or intentionally not badass, intentionally not epic. That's basically about a girl going through the stages of grief. So to give you an example of how not epic this DLC was, I'm going to show you a clip from a quest called Fake Geek Guy, which, to set it up, Mr. Torg, who's this big, gorgeous, burly, muscly man, comes in and sees everybody playing Bunkers and Badasses, and he really wants to be involved. But Lilith and Tina, because Bunkers and Badasses is for girls, and we were the ones that liked it when we were young, clearly you're faking it. You're pretending to want to be involved in this because geek stuff is important. So we're going to make up a little quest where you have to answer hard nerd questions, and if you do them correctly, then we'll let you come into the game. So I'm going to show you a clip from that really quickly.
Question 2. In the Echo Book series King of Jewelry, the rightful king needed to reforge his broken blank.
Sword!
Correct! On to the final question.
Man, you guys are being super exclusionary!
Look, when I was a kid, boys mocked me for 2 reasons. My tattoos and bunkers and badasses. I suffered for my geekiness. You don't get to invade my culture just because it's cool right now.
Holy stack suck! Repressed anchor mutts?
So yeah, that's all that quest is really about. You're just sort of moving from place to place and using different scrolls, and the scrolls have different trivia questions on them, and then they ask Torg those trivia questions. It's very, like, there's not a lot of action. The actual interactions are really, really interesting and fun, can have a lot of cool stuff to them, because our designers were like, oh, maybe you have to chase this guy down and punch it out of his hand and stuff. But in terms of the actual plot or story of that quest, it's just about a really ham-handed way of saying, like, hey, don't exclude girls from nerdy stuff, because how would you like it if they did it to you boys? It's very low-key and very not badass. The entire DLC on the whole was trying to be not epic and not important, whereas the other DLCs previous to it had tried the exact opposite. They wanted to be epic and important because we thought that's how you'd love us. This time we went in the complete opposite direction, and it turned out people really, really liked it for doing that, to the point where a lot of people talked about crying at the end of the DLC, which is really strange, because at the end of the DLC, right after a thing that happens that's supposed to make you cry, a diamond pony named Butt Stallion comes out and vomits rainbows into the sky to return light back to the world. But I'm still happy they cried. So yeah, even though the DLC didn't have any epic plot, it had character arcs, which is way more important, at least in this instance, way more important to giving the game a better story and a better feel than any plot stuff. Because, like I said, the DLC starts with Mordecai hating bunkers and badasses. As the game goes on, he turns out to really, really like it. Lilith doesn't want Tina to escape into D&D. She wants her to confront her problems, and eventually she realizes, no, it's okay. I mean, you cope with this however you have to, even if you have to, use this D&D kind of thing to do it. And Tina eventually comes to accept the fact that Roland is dead, and she sort of grows and moves on from that. And the other DLCs didn't have character arcs. They kind of just had a bad guy throwing jokes at you over and over again while you moved through a space, and I just sort of hoped that more of the jokes would stick than not, which is kind of inelegant. And this DLC actually had the stuff that I believe makes a story interesting, and we wouldn't have got there unless we had decided that character was more important than plot. And as a result, this is our most critically acclaimed and best-selling DLC that we did for Borderlands 2. It's actually really hard to get people to even review your DLC late in its lifetime, and we got a ton of DLC reviews for Assault on Dragon Keep, which is cool. And as you can see, as the timeline of a game goes on, your DLC tends to sell less and less with every subsequent pack, but then Tina sold better than everything else. Now, granted, this is a little bit muddied by the fact that we had a season pass, so that'll juke the stats a little bit. And not only that, I don't want to pretend that having a story about a little girl going through the 5 stages of grief is the sole reason that this sold better than everything else, because it's easily the best DLC, even if you took away all the story stuff, because it just has better enemies and better, art and a cooler promise and all this kind of stuff, and it's just the biggest one. But my point is that hopefully, if you're talking to, a producer or a creative director or whatever, and they say, oh, this isn't badass enough, this won't work, this isn't cool enough. We told a story about a little girl going through the stages of grief, and it did not hurt the sales at all. If anything, it might have helped them. Because there's a really, really constant sort of worry, I think, amongst AAA game development that things aren't cool enough or badass enough or epic enough. And I don't think you need to worry about that stuff, because as long as the character stuff is really strong, people will love what you're doing. This is seemingly really stupid, right? Because Borderlands is a franchise, like I said, about killing skyscraper-sized monsters and grabbing loot off of their corpses. It's not a franchise about learning the stages of grief or learning empathy for your friends. But when you think about other really good DLCs that have come out that players routinely put on the best DLC of all time lists, this is actually a pretty common kind of trend. So Minerva's Den for Bioshock 2 and The Citadel for Mass Effect 3 are easily two of the most beloved DLCs of all time. And the reason that they are that is because they focus on character over plot, just like we did, only way earlier, and probably better if I'm being completely honest. So Minerva's Den is made by the folks who went on to form the Fulbright company, who did Gone Home, and it tells a really, really small story about a very small number of characters in Rapture. It doesn't have very big epic stakes, and it's a DLC that gets people to cry by the end of it really, really frequently, and that's because it understands how important character is and how important character arcs and all that sort of dynamic interaction between characters is. Way more important than plot, much in the same way that Gone Home understood that. And much like it is still a Bioshock game, granted. It's still a game where you get a black hole plasmid and a laser gun, just like in Gone Home. But it's still, despite the fact that it is an action game on its heart, or on the face of it, its heart is still based in character and character action, and that's why people love this DLC so much. Now, Mass Effect 3's The Citadel DLC, the first half of this DLC is a really, really solid, but also kind of normal, I guess, DLC where there's like clones and betrayals and big secret, government conspiracies and car chases, and it's all very plot heavy and very cool, and it's really fun. But the second half of the DLC has really become something interesting and special, because the second half of the DLC is nothing but planning and hosting a party with all of your friends from the other from all the Mass Effect games. Just inviting everybody that you think is cool and just chilling and having drinks and playing music and choosing how your party goes. So to phrase it as GameRant.com said, once the fighting was over, the real fun began. Planning, hosting, and enjoying a party. The action satisfied, but the chance to rekindle old romances, gain closure, and let Shepard's hair down with the crew he had built was too good to pass up. So in other words, yeah, cool, show me the secret experiments and murder and stuff, but when do I get to decide what kind of music I will play at my house party? Can I invite anyone? Can I not invite some people? Can I not invite Miranda? Because fuck you, Miranda, you're pretentious. Like, this entire party DLC it works for 3 reasons. A, it's really, really well written, because it's BioWare, of course. B, it focuses on characters that we've grown to love through 3 games, which, given the length of those games, is like, 120 hours? And C, that it's really different. I've never seen an interactive party in a AAA game before that's just about hanging out with your friends where nobody attacks and you're just bros. And it's fantastic. And it's a shame that we don't do more of that, because generally AAA games don't try small-scale character stuff. We're perfectly happy to do big, epic, crazy stuff, but not really the smaller stuff. So when it came time to do our final DLC for Borderlands 2, Sir Hammerlock versus the Son of Cromrax, instead of trying to go out on this big epic note that we knew we wouldn't be able to hit because it's a relatively small story, it's a relatively small DLC in terms of how much time it'll take the player to complete, we instead tried to end on a more just sort of happy, chill-out note. So we try to make it like an anime beach party episode. If you ever watch anime, there's almost inevitably in every single anime an episode where all the characters ignore the plot for one day, they go to the beach, they are just hanging out, they're being hot Bishonen boys, it's all fun, and then they get back into the plot the very next episode. And I really like those, and I'd never seen one of those in a video game before, so we decided to do that. And granted, our beach party is a little bit different because a big giant bug monster comes out and tries to eat one of your friends, but the plot is really, really hand-waved. Like, technically the plot is, oh, save Sir Hammerlock, maybe he got captured by this bug, but nobody even really takes that seriously in the game, it's not a big deal. And the thing that our players really liked from the DLC wasn't the big bug plot, it was the fact that, like, Brick is packing to go on this beach vacation with you, but then he's arguing with Lilith about, like, hey, where did you put my tuxedo t-shirt? Because I like to wear it when I go slow dancing, and I can't find it. It's my formal wear. And there's a whole bit where they talk about, the previous, the Vault Hunters from the first game just are laughing and having a conversation about, remember when we fought that raid boss in the first Borderlands where we sort of hung, I said Bioshock, didn't I? Oh, whatever. Oh, in the first Borderlands where we stood on a ledge and we fought that raid boss and we kept shooting him over and over again. He couldn't hit us and it was this great exploit. Remember that? That was so fun. And our players really, really liked those casual, silly, off-the-cuff, meaningless conversations. Like, the entire DLC is really, really small, it's really, really character-focused, and it's really irrelevant, but in an intentional way. Nothing happens. Nobody even really learns anything in that one. It's just people hanging out and being friends and having fun. It's probably the most beloved of our smaller Headhunter DLCs. And I think this is actually a really good sort of decision that we made, because when I think about important epic plot stuff, you don't need to put that in DLC, because that stuff goes in the main game. You want to put your big space fighting war stakes in your main game because you want to justify the player's $60, and that's where you put all of your money, and that's your sort of first foray into convincing the player to love you and to love your game. But DLC is like a second date when you already know that the person is attracted to you, because it's where you get to do the really weird shit. Because they already like you, man. They already know that they're into what you're selling, so you can be a little bit more unusual. You can be a little bit kooky. You can be a little bit more self-indulgent and a little bit more odd, because it'll be fun. It'll be more fun for you. It'll be more fun for them, and it's just more fun for your team to create in general. So this is a quest from Tiny Tina's DLC, and that DLC in general was the longest DLC that we made for Borderlands 2 by far. And it wasn't because anybody at 2K told us we had to, or anybody at Gearbox told us we had to. It was because it was so much fun to work on, we just kept adding shit. This quest in particular was just a bunch of Game of Thrones references that the designer really wanted to make. So I contextualize it as, like, Tina wants to make a quest that's just Game of Thrones references for friends. Sorry, that's my phone. But Mordecai hasn't ever read or watched Game of Thrones, so he doesn't understand any of these references at all. And he goes, can you please just reference something I know? I'm getting sick of this. And so you go, okay, and after you fight some bad guys, she spawns this character who is a character from Downton Abbey, which Mordecai loves, and he just says a bunch of really weird Downton Abbey quotes at you. And yeah, so this seems really, really silly, right? It's just a Game of Thrones reference and then a Downton Abbey reference. But it didn't actually require a lot more assets than something that was quote-unquote serious. We had to build the chair made out of guns, but that was basically it. And the rest of it we sort of kit-bashed together with different assets we already had. So it wasn't that much more expensive. And more importantly, it still gave the player a reason to go to a place, shoot things, and then go to another place and shoot things there. So if you're going to be really, really cynical about shooter gameplay, there are only three things you can ever ask a player to do. That's kill a thing, defend a thing, or press use on a thing. And if you're going to be even more cynical about what the job of a writer who's working on a shooter game is, the only thing that they can ever do is justify why the player cares about killing a thing, why the player cares about defending a thing, and why the player cares about pressing use on a thing. So if that's the case, and that's all that really matters on a nuts and bolts level about story, about a shooter story, then character and plot don't always have to. So you can make the player do those things for character reasons rather than plot reasons. They don't always have to be these big epic plot reasons. So as a means of example, I'm going to take an idea of turning on a generator in a video game. So we've all done this a million times. And let's say that you're a video game writer, and let's say that your level designer comes to you and says, "Hey, I have this level. I don't know why, but I know that at some point the player needs to turn on a generator. I've structure all this combat around this generator. I need the player to go to this area, turn on a generator, and then come back. I don't know why you make it up, writer person." So you do. There are two different directions you can take as a justification for why the player might need to turn on the generator. The first justification might be, okay, maybe we'll go for a mechanical sort of point of view. Maybe we'll look at a plot reason that you have to turn on a generator or else people will die. So these plot reasons could be an energy shield needs to get power to defend the town from a mortar attack, and that's what you need to turn on the generator for. Maybe you need to turn on the generator because there's a bunch of electric fences that are keeping the evil aliens out, and if those go down, people will ambush you. Or maybe there's a door on the critical path that'll only open once the power is on, because that's how doors work, I guess. Those are all fine. Those work. But you could also justify turning on the generator from a character perspective. You could say that maybe there's a soldier who wants to listen to their favorite radio show because the DJ sounds like her dead ex-husband and it brings her comfort to hear his voice. Maybe the other rebels think that the facility you're in is completely lost, and if you turn on the lights, then they'll go, "Oh, the facility isn't lost. We have hope. We can fight better now." Or maybe your badass mercenary friend that you've been hanging out with is just scared of the dark. And that's why you're turning on all the lights. So I'm not saying that the character-centric reasons are better than the mechanical reasons. I wouldn't make that argument, but they're equally functional. They still get the player to go to the goddamn area, fight the goddamn enemies, and turn on the goddamn generator. And not only that, it gives you a lot more to work with as a writer. Like, I don't honestly know how I would make a door that needs to have power going to it in order to open. I don't know how, as a writer, I would make that interesting to the player. I'm at a loss. But I think I could figure out a couple ways to make it interesting for the player to have a friend who's a really, really badass, hard and tough mercenary, but he's also super scared of the dark. I think I know some things I could do to make that at least interesting for the player. And it would be interesting for the player because it would be surprising. See, I think a lot of us in our video game careers have hacked so many doors and blown up so many bridges and built so many bridges out of hard light and turned on generators and destroyed generators until the goddamn cows have come home. But I've never really done more character-centric things. I've done so much plot stuff, but I've never done character-centric stuff like having a sitcom bottle episode or being in a polyamorous relationship or going to high school prom or going to my best friend's wedding. And these seem like things that are absolutely impossible to put in the confines of a AAA shooter game because, it's just about shooting and stuff. But there are ways to do those things, like what I was talking about before. And then they'll still get your players to turn on the generator. Now, all that said, this is not an all-or-nothing proposition like I've sort of been treating it as. It's not all character or all plot, because character spices everything up no matter how plot-centric. So I kind of cheated when I showed you these three examples, because the first example is just word for word a thing that happens in Borderlands 2. There's this quest chain called the Overlooked, where there's this town that's called Overlook, and it's run by, or it's under the fascist control of Handsome Jack, and the mayor of the town, Karima, who's a good person, wants you to help free the town from the yoke of his aggression. So you buy medicine for everybody, and you give them all shields, and then you help build a major orbital energy shield to protect the town from mortar attacks from the moon base in the sky, because of course it's a video game. Of course there's a moon base in the sky that attacks with mortars. That's all very, very plot-centric reasons for turning on the generator. But we couched the entire plot of protecting Overlook and doing all these very plotty things in the context of two characters and how they react to one another. Those characters are Karima, the mayor, and Dave, this asshole who lives in the town. So I'm going to show you some clips from the quest that sort of depict how their relationship ties into the quest and how it changes over the course of the quest.
Karima, you can't make us no techie shieldy thing. You's a woman. Now, if the town needs someone to make us a big old sandwich, then we call you.
Your feedback is appreciated, David.
Y'all's just gonna blow yourselves up. Better quit now.
Thank you for your input, Dave.
Hey, Karima, you know what's even better than having a working shield? Not being a woman.
Oh my god, shut up, Dave.
Who's that skag-sucking moron up by the cannon?
Please ignore Dave and aim the cannon 55 degrees port bound, 86 degrees skyloft. We'll need Overlook to sustain a direct hit from the mortar to test the shield.
So, just in case you missed it, this quest is, or this section of the quest is like, cool, you built the shield, now please help me fire a mortar shell into it just so I can test and make sure that the shield works and that it'll hold a smaller mortar blast for the larger mortar blast that will come from the moon.
Now, fire the cannon.
Karima, don't feel bad. Check your husband to the grinder. Well, I'll bet you if you asked nicely.
Now, let's try that with the shield on.
So yeah, that is sort of a very character-centric way of doing a very plot-centric thing. That quest is, on its face, all about building up the town and making sure the town functions the way it's supposed to, but functionally it's actually about this character Karima learning to get more and more and more sick of the bullshit that this guy Dave is spewing. And as a result, our players actually remember that quest a lot. They bring it up a lot in our forums and on Twitter and stuff like that as one of their favorites, which is really surprising because it's a pretty normal quest compared to some of the really batshit ones that we have in Borderlands 2. Like about, a guy says, shoot me in the face, and you shoot him in the face once and he dies. People remember that, sure, but they generally don't remember the character-centric ones, the more normal ones, unless they're really, really character-centric like that one, and they hit in a good way. So it was always really encouraging to hear that people enjoyed that quest, because I do. So it's going to sound like I'm arguing from a position of extreme privilege because it's Borderlands, it's silly, right? It's really, really goofy, and you can get away with anything, and it's anything goes. It's a comedy, ha ha ha. But it's not. It's a lot simpler than that. Like, you don't need to be a comedy to do cool character stuff to make your story more interesting, because Mass Effect is certainly not a comedy, BioShock is certainly not a comedy, but within the confines of their DLC, they found a way to make all the stakes personal, to make their stories about character rather than character following their plots, and as a result, people love the stuff that they've done. So yeah, it's something I think we should all do a lot more of as games writers. So in conclusion, I would like to see a lot less of this kind of thing, and a lot more of this kind of thing. That's it.